Can the Prime Minister understand that joining calls for a ceasefire is now the best and maybe the only way to stop this conflict escalating beyond all control?
Mr. Speaker, we do have to remember that Israel has suffered a shockingly brutal terrorist attack. Hamas is responsible for this conflict and has the right to protect itself in line with international law, as the UN Charter makes clear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the UN warned that hospitals in Gaza had just 48 hours of fuel left to keep their electricity going. That was 28 hours ago. The electricity runs out tonight. Now, we have a human responsibility to all the people in Gaza, but we have a particular responsibility for UK citizens, some of whom are in those hospitals with no food, no water, no medicine and no way out. So I want to ask the Prime Minister, how much worse does the situation have to get before he will join us in calls for a humanitarian ceasefire?
Well, Mr. Speaker, from the start, we have said that the first and most important principle is that Israel has the right to defend itself under international law. Our support for that position is absolute and unchanged.
It's almost trickier for the Labour Party than it is the government. Rishi Sunak has a line. He is very fluent in stating it, but you're seeing there almost a retro feel to politics. You know, a Labour leader struggling to unite his party, the SNP outflanking them to their left. You know, quite tricky.
Yeah, it's all very 2017, isn't it, really? But I mean, again, Sunak sounding pretty fluent and reasonably sort of, he knows where he's coming from on this. But, you know, this mood is going to rise and continue. You know, the kind of questions that he's getting are the kind of questions that he was inevitably going to get 2 or 3 weeks into this. And, you know, most people in the government I speak to don't think this situation is going to be resolved for several months at the earliest. And so that sense that things are not great over there and that Israel's not sort of responding in the way that people find palatable, you know, at the moment, the Prime Minister is on reasonably solid ground, I think, in terms of the polls, that talking about brutally shocking terrorist attacks is fine. There will come a moment when this moves from the House of Commons and the odd protest in the streets to being something that the public is sort of weary of and wants to go away and get off their screens, and you know, that line may not work so well. You know, the sort of sympathy for the underdog, which is pretty prevalent in Britain, will begin to come through, and it will come through on the spears of, you know, people like the SNP and the Labour left who always want to push that agenda. So at the moment, it's not really a problem for Sunak, and as you say, I mean, there's a very good reason, as we spoke about at the top of the show, that why Starmer didn't feel able to bring this up today. Yeah.
It's because the meeting he's about to have with Labour MPs and peers on this very issue